Update. In the past few weeks since my original post, I did have cameras installed, and I'm thankful I did. For those wondering if my son and Sarah would get back together, no, they did not. My son is apparently really selling his condo, and he's not spoken to me since our last phone conversation, where he told me to have a nice life with my favorite child after not getting his way. I have been to see my lawyer about my estate and got my will altered. I haven't written my son out, but he's lost a lot of the things he would have otherwise inherited for the time being. After having some time to think, I've realized I just can't feel remorse for Jake anymore after his actions as of late. My daughter Amber calling him a simp seems to be an apt description, once I found out what that meant. But I just don't want to be angry or sad about it anymore. Neither emotion is doing me any good. So for now, I'm just going to do my best to let it go and move on. Jake seems to plan on moving on without us anyway. Hopefully in time he'll understand that what he did was wrong, but I can't change his mind for him. I did run into my son's ex, Sarah, at a random place in town. She spotted me while I was with one of my friends in the middle of the local shopping mall. She called out to me while we were in front of a bunch of people and started booing me and calling me a greedy miser. I didn't really have to say anything to her because my friend laughed at her and called her a thief and a gold-digging bee who just wanted my dead wife's ring because she couldn't have it. I saw half the crowd turn to look at her at once when he said that. Sarah flipped us off and stormed away while cursing my name and knocking over anything in her path. This included a small child, whom started crying in an instant. When she realized she'd hurt the kid, Sarah took off running. My friend and I helped the very pregnant mother of the child in calming the kid down, and thankfully the kid was okay. Sarah showed up at my house later to yell that it's all my fault her friends are saying she's a gold digger now, and won't hang out with her anymore. I said she is a gold digger because of what she did. She never had a right to my wife's ring, and she cried for days about it like a child, then broke up with my son just because he couldn't afford what she wanted. That's all something a gold digger would do. I'm not at fault just because she wanted my dead wife's ring so bad, and I'll make damn sure she never sees it again. What came next was more unintelligible screaming from her as she stomped back to her car. I'd hoped that was the end of it, but that girl just won't leave well enough alone. For those thinking Sarah and Jake's personality shifts were due to Dee, I'm not sure whether or not to tell you I'm sorry that isn't the case. It was all them, which in Jake's case is a harder pill to swallow because it means he has no excuse for such a radical shift in behavior. Sarah was arrested last week for attempting to break into my house. The cameras I had installed caught her sneaking into my backyard and trying to break in. She tried to break open my back door with an axe, and that tripped the alarm I had installed. She ran off, but the cameras in front of the house caught video of both her and her car very clearly in my driveway. She also left the axe with her fingerprints on it on the ground before she ran. When the police got there, she was long gone, but they later found her at her apartment. They initially just wanted to arrest her for breaking my door and trespassing, but she went crazy on them and wound up getting pinned to the ground and frog marched out. This woman definitely has something mentally wrong with her. A few days after Sarah was arrested, I spoke to her parents again. They offered to pay for the broken door and then filled me in on some of the details, and it seems Dee was not involved. They told me she was given D tests at the station, and her system came back clean, and since she wasn't on D, I don't think Jake was either. But Sarah was found to be very mentally unwell, so I guess it was just her crazy that was contagious. Her parents promised me that I'll never have to deal with her again, as they plan to move her out of town once they've dealt with the legalities of her situation, and they haven't contacted me again since. But I wouldn't say it's my business that they do either. I'm guessing, though, that Sarah likely needs major mental health treatment, so in a sense, I do feel a little sorry for her now. I knew Jake had to be aware of what happened with Sarah since everyone was talking about it, but he has not reached out to any friends or family. One of the people he works with has contacted me, though, and told me Jake is still openly very angry about what happened. He still believes the ring would have been a small price to pay for his happiness, but now that Sarah has been taken away, Jake has also shifted blame onto her, and saying she's the crazy gold-digging woman who ruined his life. It seems all he can do is blame, and blame other people some more. Until he accepts fault in his own actions, I don't think we can have a relationship. He's not going to do well in life if he can't take responsibility for his own actions. I just hope that some time alone wherever he chooses to go will help to mellow him out and understand where he went wrong. I'm glad that you have been able to deal as positively as possible with this situation. In my opinion, you are 100% correct that your son is responsible for his attitude and how he lives his life. If he decides to deal with the truth at some point and fix things, great. Else he gets to lead the life he has chosen. The home security system is a great investment, as will be a secure safe. If your daughter does not have a security system, that might be something she considers investing in. Jake is just an immature child that is blind because of love. I don't know if he has a lot of experience in relationships. Maybe he thinks this is how love is. Not an excuse for his actions. Just give him time and space. Try again later to contact him. Maybe you can trust him again in the future. My grandpa died 2 months ago, and my grandma died 10 years before him, and my mom a year before her, meaning that the only two beneficiaries in the trust were me and my uncle. However, after my grandma died, Grandpa started hanging around with this terribly unpleasant woman, Kay from now on, who lived in the trailer park not far from his house. The entire family had a venomous hatred for her, but tolerated her as she was Grandpa's guest to family occasions. Note that she was never invited. She simply showed up. And she had quite the reputation for starting fights with family members, such as lying about my uncles to garner sympathy, and even going so far as to insult my late mother to my face on one unfortunate Christmas. It was hard to say anything against her, as we all felt guilty since Grandpa was a lonely old man who was introverted in the first place and had lost his outgoing wife. At least we reasoned Kay gave him a reason to wake up in the morning. That said, it was impossible not to notice the disgusting amount of money he was lavishing on Kay. Clothes shopping every week, a brand new car, a new tough shed for her trailer, expensive Vegas shows, and even LASIK eye surgery. No one said anything since that was his pension money and he could do with it what he wanted. But my uncle, one 4th of July, found a pamphlet about getting a trust altered on his desk. He flipped, said that he objects, said that objects and money in the trust were also Grandma's and that he had no place to let Kay into that. Grandpa immediately conceded and threw out the pamphlet. It made everyone hate Kay more. Eventually, my grandpa fell sick to the illness he'd never recover from. I'll never forget, Kay came into the hospital and complained that he had better get out of the hospital soon since she had some bills hitting soon and she didn't know what to do. I know it sounds too outlandish, but I swear to God, that's what she said. Uncle screamed at her to leave. Later I went to talk to Grandpa, and he told me about a safe with a stash of money that he had been squirreling away for Kay for after he passes. He gives me the code and asks me to give it to her. He died the next day. Kay didn't come to the funeral. After the funeral arrangements were all settled, I went to the safe and opened it. There were thousands in there. Floored and a little insulted, I just closed the safe and didn't touch it. As I was closing out his credit card and bank, I was horrified. There was way more money spent on Kay than any of us had ever speculated in the past. I was furious. That woman had milked my poor lonely grandpa for every red cent she could manage. So much so that she felt entitled to it apparently. It makes my blood boil to even think about letting this harpy get one last payday off my grandpa, and I think it'd be much better served on a good charity. But on the other hand, it was his wish for me to give her that money. How can I go against that? Which choice would make me the bigger a-hole? Not the a-hole. It wasn't in a will. Personally, I wouldn't even bother with the charity. Share it out to family that could use it. Anyone in your extended family struggling or has a baby on the way? It still constitutes an oral trust where OP is the trustee and K is the beneficiary. K could technically sue OP for breach of fiduciary duty if she discovered this. Objectively, you're the a-hole. It's your grandpa's will and his choice. You could get a lawyer to try to contest it, but it seems like your grandpa was pretty sound when he made the decisions. That being said, if everything you said were true and unbiased, then in my personal opinion, I'd say so what if it makes you an a-hole? Give it to charity and know that money has gone to a good cause. Not the a-hole, but also everyone sucks here. It's a very tough choice. If the money was from the trust, which had your grandma's inheritance and your mother's as well, then definitely not. If there were no legal document entitling her to the money, possibly not the a-hole. Since you're not fulfilling your grandpa's wishes, you are being the a-hole, but it does sound like Kay was manipulating him. You're donating it to charity, which is good, and she didn't turn up to the funeral or anything, so I think probably not the a-hole overall. Background. My Uncle Kay wasn't around much when I was young, only when my mother and I moved back to my hometown in 2006. He always had a drinking problem and some other health problems. He served a few years in Iraq, and when he returned, his PTSD was so debilitating, he drank himself to death in 2014. When I began to regularly visit, I asked my mom if Kay had any children of his own. She was uncomfortable, but told me that he might have a child somewhere. Fast forward to 2019. The 5-year anniversary of Kay's death is coming up. Mom and I were outside talking about Kay and trauma and all this emotional stuff when I remembered her confession from 12 years ago. So I asked her if she knew anything about his illegitimate child. She told me everything. Kay's only friend was C, who'd recently married T. They had been trying for a child with no success. Not sure how it happened, but T and Kay were alone one night and wound up sleeping together. Shortly after, she was pregnant. Unsure of who the father was, C, T, and K all agreed that the best option was for C and T to raise the baby. The last time he saw them was the day after T gave birth. I asked my mom if she knew their names. It turns out that my dad was Facebook friends with T. From there, I found her, a 20-something-year-old named A, who my mom confirmed was Kay's child. We'd been talking about Kay's health and mental problems, so I chose to tell A everything. Family medical history is super important, and she only had half of it. Maybe there was some regret in there. Maybe I felt like if this had been done sooner, my uncle could have known his daughter before he died. Maybe he wouldn't have died at all. I messaged her. I couldn't think of any other way to say it. Just, Kay is your biological father. Amazingly, she didn't block me and instead asked for proof. I pulled out some old photo albums, and sure enough, we had actual photos of A being born. It didn't prove paternity, but it proved my family was in the delivery room. A messaged me back to say T had told her everything. I asked what she was going to do, and she told me she planned to get a DNA test. That was the last I heard from her, though she did later add me on Facebook. The test proved Kay was her father. A's friends began to message me saying I should know my place. Shortly after that, my grandma came over to confront me about the same thing, telling me I should have stayed out of it. Their family is hurting, and it's my fault. We no longer speak. A and Grandma decided to visit Kay's grave together. I had no idea until A posted about it after. I thought it was nice, but my mom was furious that no one had apologized or thanked me. A few days ago, we found messages from my grandma that explained why. All this time thinking A was angry at me from the start. But no, my grandma was the angry one, and she's telling everyone I'm a brat with no heart. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole. A huge, gigantic a-hole. This was not your decision to make. How dare you? You're the a-hole. This was absolutely none of your business. You had no right to unilaterally decide that A would be better off in the long run knowing this, or what it would do to her family. If this was information that you felt A absolutely needed to hear, you could have at least given her parents a heads up so that they could tell her and at least be mentally prepared. You seem to be justifying this to yourself because A isn't mad, something you had no way of knowing in advance. A lot of people think you're the a-hole here, but I don't. Not the a-hole. I think it's messed up that A's parents hid her genetic father from her for her whole life. If I was in A's position, I would 100% want to know about this. A lot of people have said you shouldn't have gotten involved, but I think it's good that you did. I, 28 female, came from a culture where cousins getting married is very common. My parents are first cousins. My parents understood the consequences of this only when we moved to a Western country 16 years ago. My parents deeply regret this now, as it has led to a lot of health issues for me and my sister, 26 female. Now to the main story. I've made it a point to tell my significant others that my parents are first cousins, usually when the relationship is getting serious. This is because my first boyfriend was very grossed out by it when I mentioned it. He wasn't mean about it, but told me he couldn't look past it, and we broke up amicably. After my first boyfriend, I have had only 2 serious relationships who I've told this to, and they ended for other reasons. A year ago, my sister got a job in a big company where one of my exes, let's call him Jay, is working. Jay and I remained friends after breaking up, so he and my sister got along well too. That is until Jay let it slip that I told him about my parents being cousins. My sister literally screamed at my face when she came to my house. I told her I had to tell him if we were going to be in a serious relationship. She told me, what kind of moron goes around advertising such a huge family secret? She then says no one should ever know, and I have to promise her that. I told her I won't promise anything. I told her I never told anyone other than my 3 ex-boyfriends. Not even my closest friends know, because it's not needed for them to know. She kept crying it affects her too. I tried consoling her, but she swatted my hand away. She left after screaming a bit more. I called Jay and told him I was very disappointed in him and our friendship might be over. He apologized and said he just blurted it out without thinking and said he'll personally apologize to my sister and never talk about this again. My sister texted me later saying she's going no contact with me until she feels she can trust me. I still don't feel I did anything wrong. I felt I had to tell the person I was falling in love with and not let it be a deal breaker later when the relationship is serious. So am I the a-hole? Edit. My parents' marriage was an arranged marriage when they were teens. I would never blame my parents, but have bluntly told my grandparents, 2 of whom are doctors, that what they did was disgusting and wrong. Not the a-hole. I believe it is necessary to disclose if the relationship is becoming serious, to the point that children are considered. As you have had health issues because of this, it is important that your partner knows this information as well. Your sister does not have a right to be upset with you. It is your decision to make as much as it is hers whether to tell people. I will say this, make sure the relationship is becoming serious, i.e., starting a family, marriage, before letting them know, as it is a family secret. Not the a-hole. It was your secret to tell too. You were right to be transparent to a potential husband about the issue, as there are health ramifications should you have children. Your sister can handle the matter her way. You have a right to handle it yours. Not the a-hole. You only told people that had a genuine reason to know, i.e., people you may one day have a child with. You did not betray your sister, and she isn't thinking clearly if she believes you did.